This podcast is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Legend of the Bones. Following in the footsteps of giants, Legend of the Bones is a chimera. A mix of old-school tabletop RPG and dark fantasy storytelling. As its name might suggest, in Legend of the Bones the dice rule. There'll be no rerolls, no fudging the dice, no metacurrency. The roll of the bones will determine the character's destiny, and no one will be spared their fate. None shall escape the destiny of bone. Last time on Legend of the Bones. Following the fight with the Manticore in the shrine at Karak Ugul, which saw Jeddah killed, the companions mourned the death of their friend. After, while Lena prayed for Canute and then herself to be partly healed, Talia recounted to Beric that unnatural monsters like manticores are creatures from the Rift, a tear between the material world and hell, through which dark magic flows and diabolical beings can escape. The bard's explanation was interrupted when Valen drew the companions' attention to the stone doors leading to the next chamber. An inscription above the door gave a clue as to how the portal may be opened, and from this, Valen was able to solve the method to unbar the ingenious lock. In the chamber beyond, the companions found a large cavern that contained an underground waterfall, the spray from which had healing properties that further soothed Lena and Canute's wounds. Lena remembered the words at the entrance to the shrine, and deduced that one must enter the waterfall in order to receive the wisdom it may offer. Having noticed the pool into which the waterfall fell contained many objects, Valen determined that an offering would need to be made, and so, after stripping naked and casting the enchanted ring he found at Angrak into the water, the mage entered the pool and walked into the cascade. Chapter 48, Part 1, Day 49, Afternoon. Party status: Beric, 43 out of 43 hit points. Lena, 25 out of 31 hit points. Valen, 19 out of 19 hit points. Talion, 24 out of 24 hit points. Canute, 31 out of 31 hit points. Spells available: Valen has memorized Push, Soothe, Revive, and Clairvoyance. Talion has memorized Resolve, Poetic Prose, Pitch, and Imbue. Lena can pray for 1 second level miracle and 1 third level miracle. The moment Valen stepped beneath the torrent, the relentless force of the water threatened to overwhelm him, to pummel him down, not only with its sheer weight, but also a power that only his kind could sense. He tried to focus his mind. If Lena was right, and the waterfall was the veil referenced in the inscription at the entrance to this shrine, then he had to find a way beyond it. To what, he knew not, but his intuition told him to move forward. Mustering his will, he pushed on, groping with his hands. Each step was a tremendous effort, and whilst he felt the energy from Lena's touch fortifying his limbs, he feared it would not be enough. Suddenly, without warning, he broke free from the water, and such was the shift in resistance that he stumbled forward and nearly fell. As he regained his balance, he was struck by the abrupt and unnatural silence. In front of him was pitch black. In fact, the only light came from the silvery curtain from which he had emerged. and in the eeriness of his surroundings, he briefly wondered if he was dead. The thought flitted away as he shivered involuntarily in the cool air, goosebumps raising on his wet, naked skin.
"Hail!"
he called into the darkness, not knowing what else to do.
"I come seeking wisdom. Will you judge me worthy?"
Nothing. He waited in the black silence for a few minutes, and when still nothing happened, he began to consider turning back. Valen's thoughts turned to his master. Since Amos's death, he had desperately missed his master's counsel. What would he advise? Valen wondered.
"Amos,"
he murmured absently. Almost as if prompted by the name, tiny lights, maybe the same crystals as before, began to glow on the walls of a sphere-like chamber which now appeared before Valen's eyes. More curiously still was that they seemed arranged to mark out constellations which were familiar to the mage. Opposite from where Valen had entered, a second veil of water glistened with silver light, and just as Valen marvelled at this wonder, a shadow of a figure could be seen within. Valen was momentarily tempted to step back into the waterfall, but something made him push the fear aside. The shadow grew bigger as it approached, until a figure emerged into the chamber. The man, for it was a man, was not wet like Valen, and instead wore fine robes of grey and green. His whole being was surrounded by a pale, shimmering aura. Whilst his visage was old, there was at the same time an agelessness to him. And all the while, from the moment the man stepped from the veil, Valen's mouth hung agape, for he was no stranger. It was his dead master, Amos ap Howard. As this location is the result of a positive stumble upon, it needed to be something special. Having given it quite some thought, I settled on it being a place of reverence for the old ways. The waterfall is a gateway where the barrier between the living realm and the other world, that being the realm of the dead, is thin. In turn, if a mortal follows the old ways and is deemed worthy, then they may pass into the chamber where Valen now stands, a sort of in-between realm, allowing them to commune with the ancestors for a short period. I did not want access to this chamber to be automatic, and you may recall that in the last episode, Valen passed a wisdom check, which represented his will to succeed. As one of the ancestors, Amos can only remain outside of the other world for one game turn, so Valen will need to make the most of the time. The mage will be able to pose questions or ask advice, but Amos's answers may only reflect what has passed or what may be known. He cannot foretell the future. But here's the rub. How do I resolve this without metagaming the questions and answers? I think the simple answer is that I need to ask the Oracle. I am also going to rule that only with the result of yes and will Amos give a complete answer. Other yes results will mean that he will direct Valen to where the mage can discover the truth. It makes sense that Valen would ask about the Hellstones. I'm not going to roll to see if Amos can reveal more about their power. As the keeper of the Eye of Mordgren, this is something he would certainly know. Valen knows that when the tyrant warlord Vortigern ruled 1,000 years ago, he was vanquished by the hero Derwin. Given that Vortigern possessed the power of the Hellstones, does Amos know how Derwin managed to defeat him? A 5. That's a straight yes. Way back in episode 13, we had a flashback where Valen witnessed Amos trying to disenchant the Eye of Mordgren. Can Amos tell him any more about this? A 6. That's a yes and. Okay, so now I want to know whether there is any way to destroy the Hellstones. A 5. That's a straight yes. Okay then. Chapter 48, Part 2, Day 49, Afternoon. Party status. The party status is unchanged. Valen stared in wonder at the apparition before him. His master was just as he remembered, clearly aged, but somehow filled with a youthful vigour, epitomised by a mischievous twinkle in his grey-blue eyes. He stood, his hands clasped in front of him, a serene smile upon his face.
How could this be? Do you really need to ask?
Amos said in response. Valen shook his head.
No, but I never thought to see you again. Not in this life.
In that moment, the joy that Valen felt turned to sorrow.
I am sorry, Master. I failed you.
Amos's expression changed to one of earnestness.
Failed me? No, Valen. There was nothing you could have done. Do not punish yourself with torment. There are plenty others who will seek that for you. You have many burdens ahead, not least as the keeper of the Eye of Mordgun. It may not be in your possession, but you and it are now bound, and you will need to be strong in the days ahead. Now, you came here seeking wisdom, and I have little time in this place. If you have something you would ask, do so now.
Valen nodded, collecting his thoughts.
Vortigern had the power of the Hailstones, yet he was defeated by Derwin at the Battle of Cowlan.
He reasoned aloud.
So there must be a limit to the power they bestow. Indeed. Alone, the power of each is insidious, subtle, and left unguarded will slowly affect those close with their malign influence. Yet the more that are brought together, the more their strength grows, and bestows to the bearer the power to subvert nature and corrupt the hearts of men.
Amos confirmed.
But Derwin was able to withstand their influence and defeat Vortigern. How? To discover that, you will need to go to Innis Maitan, Derwin's final resting place.
The spark of a memory flickered in Valen's mind.
I remember you trying to disenchant the Eye of Mordgun. Yes, but at great personal cost, and I was only able to subdue its power, something which through the spilling of blood was temporarily undone.
Valen looked at Amos with surprise.
Maynard of Harburg?
Amos nodded.
That is ill news.
Valen considered for a moment.
Is there a way to destroy them? The Hailstones?
A flicker of sadness flashed across Amos's face.
In a sense,
the old man said enigmatically.
But that is something you will need to discover for yourself. You must trust your instincts. What I can tell you is like the dark god after whom it is named, the Eye of Mordgun is chief among the Hailstones. Destroy it, and the others will cease to have power.
Valen sensed that Amos knew more, but it was clear that his master would not elaborate.
I understand. Thank you.
Amos's expression softened to one of affection.
I fear my time here is done. We shall not meet again, Valen. But know this. You are the son I never had, and you have made me proud.
And with that, Amos turned and walked back through the veil. So the companions have discovered some valuable information, though I am sure that they would not think it was worth the life of Jenna. They will need to decide, of course, what to do with this new knowledge, but for now the party has tarried here long enough, and so it is time for them to continue on their journey upriver. The next settlement is some 30 miles away, and given that it is now quite late in the day, I think it makes sense that they will make camp somewhere a little upriver once they have cleared the Carrick Oogle Gorge. It is here that the companions give Jenna a proper burial, and Elena commends her soul to Naya's keeping. The following day they continue towards the village of Deliobol. Day 50. Weather. 6. Overcast and temperate. Wind direction. 4. Southeasterly. That will mean the crew will have to row. Stumble upon. 7. Nothing. Wandering encounter. 5. No encounter. The companions reach the village of Deliobol by mid-afternoon. Here they repair and resupply, spending a total of 5 gold, which includes fresh ale and rations for the Uberdracker's crew for the next stage of the journey. The midwife, Morglin, bids the companions farewell at this point. She knows some folk in the village, and can avail herself upon their hospitality. Day 51. The companions set sail once more, heading for the settlement of Lostwithel, 40 miles upstream. Weather. 4. Temperate but wet. Wind direction. 4. Northerly. That will help as the sail can be raised. Stumble upon. 7. Nothing. Wandering encounter. A 1. An encounter is indicated. Time to consult my custom encounter table for river journeys. Rolling 2d6. Okay then. Chapter 48. Part 3. Day 51. Morning. Party status. Beric, 43 out of 43 hit points. Lena, 31 out of 31 hit points. Valen, 19 out of 19 hit points. Talion, 24 out of 24 hit points. Canute, 31 out of 31 hit points. Spells available. Valen has memorized Push, Shield, Soothe, Revive, Clairvoyance, and Ignite. Talion has memorized Resolve, Poetic Prose, Pitch, and Imbue. Lena can pray for 2 first-level miracles, 2 second-level miracles, 1 third-level miracle, and 1 fourth-level miracle. A low mist shrouded the land on either side of the River Nade as the Uberdracker glided upstream. Overnight, clouds had drifted in on a northerly breeze, bringing with them a slight chill, and by dawn, the laden sky had opened, releasing a heavy rain, which now danced and leapt on the river's surface. In such conditions, there was little cheer among the ship's crew, who sat heads bowed on the rain-soaked benches. But whilst the wind's direction meant that the sail could be unfurled, all were keen to row, as the toil warmed the blood. Shortly after leaving Deliobol, the river once more passed through dense woodland. It was clearly ancient, for many boughs of oak, beech and yew were thick with the passage of time. Lena sat near the prow, looking westward into the dark forest, watching the rain pitter-patter upon the foliage of the nearest trees. Perhaps it was the inclement weather, but it seemed an ominous and foreboding place, not at all like the birchwood near Angurak, through which they had travelled a few days earlier. The memory of that day, walking beside Jenna, came flooding back, and how the two of them had talked beneath the dappling sunlight. She pictured the young woman's face, how her hair was raven, her skin clear, and her eyes brighter than she had ever seen them. For in those few days that followed their battle with the Brethren, it seemed that a great weight had been lifted from Jenna's shoulders. But now, Lena thought bitterly, she lay alone in the cold earth. At that moment, Valen came to sit beside her. He too looked troubled, his brow knotted in a frown. He said nothing, but simply put his hand on hers. Lena smiled at him wistfully. She understood his disquiet. He had encouraged that they should explore the shrine at Carrick Oogle, and knowing the mage, she deduced that he felt a sense of guilt for Jenna's death. That was nonsense, of course, but Valen was a man who, despite his demeanour, felt things deeply. Still waters run deep, she thought. She looked back out at the forest.
I like not this place,
she declared.
it feels...
She hesitated, unable to find the right word.
Wild,
Valen suggested.
Yes, that. But also oppressive, in a savage, untamed way.
You are not the first to think so.
Valen said.
Oh?
The people of Powanmore originally came from my homeland. That is why their ancient language, Ultimarenish, is close to my native tongue.
The mage explained.
And it is why some places here on the peninsula have Whalan names.
Valen indicated towards the forest.
This place, for example, is called Gwillis Goose. It means wild wood.
It certainly is that.
Yes. From the maps I have studied, this river marks its western limit. There is a mountain at the heart of the forest, and rumour has it that of those who have ventured there, few return, and those that do are never quite the same.
Then I am content that we are not.
Lena smiled, looking at the mage, whose brow was less furrowed now, the conversation having clearly distracted Valen from his introspection. The pair's attention was drawn by Beric, who was making his way along the ship. As he reached them, they could see that he held in his hands a wound length of thin rope, to which was attached a lead weight the size of a fist. Canute had been teaching his cousin shipcraft, and the big man was clearly in his element. Grinning, Beric tossed the plumb line over the portside edge of the ship, and waited for it to sink to the riverbed, all the while keeping an eye on the rope's regularly spaced knots as they disappeared beneath the waterline. The warrior happened to glance upriver, and immediately a quizzical expression passed across his face.
"What's that?"
he questioned. Lena and Valen both stood, and turned to gaze out to see what Beric had spotted. Away ahead, close to the eastern bank, something was floating down the river. It was large, possibly the carcass of a deer or some other kind of wild animal, and the three of them watched with curiosity as it came closer, bobbing in the river's gentle current. Whatever it was, it appeared as if something was protruding from the corpse.
"That looks like an arrow,"
Beric commented, and just as he said it, the corpse snagged on a low branch near the bank, causing it to twist, and as it did so, the unmistakable sight of a human hand came into view. On its own, a body in the river may be innocuous enough. After all, accidents happen. But with the body, pierced as it is with an arrow, then there is clear evidence of some kind of conflict. In order to determine more about this encounter, I need to turn again to the oracle. Before I do that, a simple high-low roll on a d20 will determine if the body is male or female. A low roll will indicate a female. A 7. Okay, so it's a woman. First question for the oracle. Is the woman actually dead? Given that this is almost certain, I will add a +1 modifier to the roll to make a yes more likely. A modified 4. That's a yes but. I'm going to interpret that but as there being evidence that the woman has only recently died. So what about who she is? Does her clothing suggest that she is a peasant or a villager? A 6. That's a yes and. Okay, so the logical assumption would be that she comes from the next settlement upriver, the village of Lostwithiel. That being the case, is this the result of an isolated act of violence? A 3. That's a no but. So has the village been attacked? A 4. That's a yes, but... Well, based on that, I need to determine who is responsible. I'm going to roll a d6. On a 1 to 2, the attack was by brigands. On a 3 to 4, it will be soldiers. And on a 5 or 6, the culprits will be goblins. A 1. Right, so one final question. Are these brigands in the employ of someone powerful? Okay then. Chapter 48, Part 4, Day 51, Afternoon. Party status. The party status is unchanged. Water sloshed onto the Uberdracher's deck as Beric hauled the woman's body out of the river and into the ship. He laid her down respectfully, more water seeping from her sodden woolen shift, and it was immediately apparent that any hope that she may be alive was gone. Lena knelt down beside the body and gently brushed aside the matted brown hair which clung to the woman's face. She was young, perhaps only a year or two older than the cleric, her blue eyes staring lifelessly ahead. Lena instantly thought once again of Jenna. Closing the woman's eyelids, Lena reached for her holy symbol, and fighting the lump in her throat, she quietly spoke the ritual blessing for the dead. Then, gripping hold of the arrow shaft, the cleric pulled it from the woman's body and handed it to Beric. By now, the others had gathered around, and even Canute had come forward from the steering platform, having given over the helm to his second, Raven. The Skane looked at the woman's corpse, and then to Beric.
Goblins?
He suggested.
No,
The warrior replied, holding up the arrow to show the fletchings.
I've seen goblin arrows, and this is not one.
Brigands, then.
Most likely. Could this woman be one of them?
Valen posited.
I think not.
Beric differed.
Her garb is that of common folk. She must hail from Lost Withel.
Then we must make haste.
Lena interjected.
If the village has been attacked, then we must help.
Very well.
Canute concurred.
By my reckoning, we are close. That wound is fresh,
He indicated to the woman.
so she could not have floated far.
Without another word, the Skane warrior turned and made his way back to the steering platform, giving orders as he went,
Row!
to which the Uberdracher's crew responded by pulling hard on the oars, propelling the ship forward more quickly. Beric retrieved his gear from where it had been stored, pulling on his mail shirt, and seeing him do so, the others did likewise. Once dressed, the companions stood at the prow, gazing anxiously ahead, wondering what they might find. They did not have to wait long, for as the Uberdracher rounded a bend in the river, the village of Lost Withel came into view.
The Nine have mercy.
Lena exclaimed, for while not unexpected, the sight which greeted them was chilling. Many acres of the surrounding forest on the eastern bank had been cleared, making way for a collection of low buildings of timber, numbering no more than a score. Several were ablaze, billowing plumes of thick black smoke into the already dark sky. The hue and cry of dozens of people in distress could be heard. Several figures, presumably the villagers, desperately tried to combat the flames. Some were wandering aimlessly, bloodied and bruised, and clearly in shock, while others were on their knees, wailing over the bodies of the dead. Thank you for listening to Legend of the Bones. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you like what you've heard, then please consider rating and reviewing the show in your podcatcher of choice. Not only do I love seeing the feedback, but it really does help the show reach new listeners. As always, where would I be without my amazing cast of voice talent? Just one person to thank in this episode. Returning once again as Canute is Jon Cohen, creator of Tale of the Manticore. Thanks, Jon, you always deliver, and I am ever grateful. I'll put Jon's links in the show notes. You can also help by liking or reposting new episode announcements, or by recommending the show online or to a friend. You really can't beat the power of word of mouth. Alternatively, if you'd like to show your appreciation by buying me a metaphorical cup of tea, then I have a Ko-fi page at ko-fi.com/Legend of the Bones. Any donations will go towards the show's running costs. If you're interested, I have a range of merchandise, which can be found at www.redbubble.com/people/legendbones/shop. To keep the cost down to you, all items are presented at zero markup. I make no money from them. It's purely to give something back to fans of the show. I would also love to know what you think of the show, and I do respond to every message I receive. So with that in mind, you can contact me on X at LegendBones, Blue Sky at LegendBones, Mastodon at LegendBones at ttrpg-hangout.social, Instagram at LegendOfTheBones, email at legendofthebones@gmail.com, or go to legendofthebones.blogspot.com for show notes, house rules, character profiles, art, maps and more. Join me next time to find out what awaits our adventurers as the Bones decide their fate. None shall escape the destiny of Bone.
Life's a game, the world's a stage, and we're merely role players. Now playing in the main house, Vigil.
It's true. My department has abandoned this town and left you to fend for yourselves against your worst nightmares. But I promise I'm not going anywhere, and I'm asking you to join me. Your neighbours never need to wake up and remember their nightmares, because we'll be there, keeping watch.
Vigil, a Merely Roleplayers production. Search for Merely Roleplayers wherever you find podcasts. Maximum drama guaranteed.